Welcome to the media critique case of the punched Monet painting at the National Gallery of Ireland. We'll begin with a background of the specific painting, how it ended up at the National Gallery of Ireland, the crime that was committed, and the verdict handed down in court. The painting involved was the Argenteuil Basin with a single sailboat. It depicts an autumn scene on the basin of Argenteuil, a city located in the northwestern suburbs of Paris, France. It was painted by Monet in 1874, the year that the first Impressionist exhibition was held in Paris. Claude Monet was a leader of the French Impressionist movement. He lived in Argenteuil from 1871 to 1878. Fitting out a boat as a floating studio, he painted many views of the River Seine and its banks. Monet is internationally recognized as a master, with his works being highly sought after. Masterful as a colorist and a painter of light and atmosphere, his work has influenced subsequent generations of abstract painters. The painting was purchased by Irish dramatist and politician Edward Martin in 1899 on the advice of his cousin, the writer George Moore, who had lived in Paris and knew of the Impressionist artists. It was subsequently bequeathed to the National Gallery of Ireland in 1924. From security camera footage, it shows that Andrew Shannon visited the National Gallery of Ireland on the 29th of June 2012 at around 11 a.m. He had gone to the room where the Monet was on display. Access to the permanent collections are free, and so Shannon was able to enter the gallery for a period, leave, and then return again a short time later. On his return, Shannon appeared to stumble forward and with his right hand raised, struck the painting, punching a hole through the canvas. The resulting damage was described as an extensive three-branched tear, as can be seen in the image. Andrew Shannon was taken into custody and later found guilty in 2014. Originally from Dublin, he had trained as a French polisher. After the event, Shannon had claimed to authorities that the attack was a way of getting back at the state. He later retracted the statement, though, and stated instead that he had felt faint and fell into the artwork. That was an accident rather than an intentional criminal act. The jury nonetheless found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the addition that he would not be allowed in any gallery for 15 months after his release. After the initial conviction, Shannon took the decision on appeal and lost. The Court of Appeal held that his trial was satisfactory and his conviction safe. There were a number of key stakeholders within this case that will now be discussed. The key stakeholders were the perpetrator, Andrew Shannon, the National Gallery of Ireland, the general public, and the Republic of Ireland. We will now go through each of these stakeholders. As stated previously, after committing the act of vandalism, Andrew Shannon gave two differing versions of why he had committed the act. When he changed his statement to it being an accident, reportedly claiming he had felt faint due to a poor heart condition and fell into the painting, this health issue was later confirmed as he had to undergo a quadruple heart bypass. From the guilty verdict, it is shown that the jury did not believe this reasoning and saw it as an intentional act of vandalism. Regarding motivations, his initial statement places it as a political act of vandalism, but as he did not stick to this motivation in his defense, it is hard to pin down what his motivation was. As the owner and guardian of the Monet, this crime has made the National Gallery rethink its security measures, with the painting now protected behind protective glass after its restoration and reintroduction back into the gallery. The restoration work of the painting took 18 months, using a process that involved sewing microscopic threads back together. Although the restoration was a success, 7% of the damaged area was lost. With the heightened media attention throughout the course of this case, the National Gallery was able to highlight and bring attention to the great work of the Conservation Department, and attracted attention at the reintroduction of the Monet back into the gallery on the 1st of July 2014. The public is a stakeholder, as Monet's work is a milestone in the history of art. This is recognized through the popularity of his work, his name recognition, and the position his pieces hold within collections. By the gallery being open to the public, with free admission for their permanent galleries, the general public are a stakeholder in this case, as this outcome has affected how the interaction between the gallery and the public occurs, especially with regards to the painting now that it is placed behind protective glass. As has been stated, Monet's painting belongs to a publicly funded institution operating under the aegis of the Department of Culture, Heritage and Gaeltacht. The National Gallery therefore preserves and develops its collections with the financial support of the Government of Ireland. Caring for a painting worth €10 million and investing a five-figure sum in the restoration of the painting amounts to investing in symbolic value, and implies that the state believes that this is beneficial to the people of Ireland and to the prestige of the nation. The Republic of Ireland were addressed directly as a stakeholder by Andrew Shannon when, after his arrest, he told the police that his act was an attempt to get back at the state. The major narratives presented within the media regarding this crime is of interest. We will now discuss the main themes brought out through the media. Here are a selection of headlines covering stories from when the crime occurred right up to when the Monet was restored and brought back on view at the National Gallery. By having a quick skim over, you can see that a major theme shared across all the headlines and a sensational aspect of the story was the value of the painting involved. In all the mentioned articles, the event and trial that followed were covered as a crime of vandalism, with no emphasis placed on it being a unique or special crime in any way regarding the motivations behind the act. They positioned Shannon as an amateur antique dealer with a spate of previous convictions or ongoing antique-related criminal cases. It was pointed out how Shannon had already been arrested in 2007 for having in his home antique books stolen from storage. These books were from the Library of Carton House in Kildare, the historical family seat of the Fitzgerald family. This story, along with other examples of Shannon having stolen objects in his possession, brings him to be described in court as someone with a propensity based on previous convictions of acquiring things. This narrative helped to draw a link between Shannon's previous criminal acts and the current one he was accused of, creating the image that the crime fits a pattern of criminal activity. It is never discussed how the major differences in these acts is that one relates to purposely attempting to destroy art, while the other examples are of openly presenting stolen cultural heritage within his home. The positive aspect of this media coverage is that the National Gallery had increased media exposure for an extended period of time, including when the Monet was restored and brought back on display. This brings us to the broader question relating to this crime. Should this case be classed as simply an act of vandalism, or should it be more clearly defined as an act of art crime? Conklin defines art as criminally punishable acts that involves works of art and concludes that art crimes involve deceit, theft, or damage. Jack Katz opines that vandals endow works of art with a seductive power, claiming that the subject of the work or the artist who created it speaks to them. David Friedberg suggests that vandals attack art not only because it symbolizes the wealth, power, and religion of its owners, but also because vandals attribute life to the figure the work represents. These positions infer that art does elicit strong emotional and behavioral responses from people, and that these responses can manifest themselves in criminal acts specifically related to pieces of art and the loaded symbolism they hold for individuals and groups. The symbolism that art holds and the crimes that manifest from these can sometimes be strongly linked to political motivation. Dario Gamburo has used the theories of Pierre Bourdieu to argue that art vandalism is a social protest by people who regard themselves as outsiders to an art world that forces on them objects that they cannot understand. This leads to classical works of art being linked to symbolizing the privileges of the ruling class or the power of the state, and contemporary art being linked to it symbolizing cultural exclusivity or people resenting the high prices paid for objects that seem to require little skill to create. Vandals sometimes have political or ideological goals, seeking through their acts to challenge established rules or beliefs. Although art is most often defaced and destroyed as a protest against a ruling class, in some cases the ruling class itself is destroyed art that offends its political beliefs. Vandals who give political reasons for their attacks on art have claimed in the past that it represents a social order that unfairly favors the wealthy and powerful and oppresses the less fortunate. Political terrorists, in turn, can damage or destroy art and antiquities in a symbolic act to show societies that their rulers cannot protect even the most valued parts of their cultural heritage. Art may be an especially important symbol to attack if it symbolizes the social order they are seeking to destroy. Offended morality or fundamentalist religious beliefs can produce strong motivations towards the damaging or destruction of specific art or antiquities if it challenges particular worldviews. Motivation regarding the Punch Monet is a point of controversy due to the changing reasons given by Shannon for why he committed the criminal act and the narrative shown within the media. Shannon's previous convictions relating to art or antiquities relates to theft, but this was the first known instance that Shannon deliberately attempted to damage or destroy art. So while the previous convictions relating to art or antiquities looks to have no political motive, this instance, where he stated immediately afterwards that it was to get back at the state, gives the impression that there were at least political undertones in his motivation. But once Shannon changed his statement, it was never discussed as a possibility within media coverage. The narrative maintained that it was an act of vandalism with no motive mentioned, instead choosing to focus on the financial value of the piece, the financial cost of restoring it, and the positive narrative regarding the quality of work the restoration team had done. There was no discussion regarding why Shannon picked that particular painting to attack, nor what possibly motivated him to commit the act in the first place. Due to his prior convictions relating to art and antiquities, this act was placed within the framework of a pattern of behavior, disregarding the fact that Shannon's aim to damage art was a significant step away from his prior convictions that related to ownership and display of pieces within his home. Art is a unique commodity due to the loaded symbolism intrinsically linked to it and the responses this symbolism produces in both individuals and groups from all walks of life. Though the price it attains on the open market may be significant, the significance of a piece's financial status are linked to its symbolic significance. It is therefore not that surprising that art will attract unique crimes. The act of vandalism is not unique to art crime, but the motivation behind these crimes against art is. The media coverage during this case study presents the void between seeking out the symbolic meaning behind what motivates these acts to occur and the consumerist outlook of society that focuses on the name recognition of the piece and the prices involved in the financial worth of the painting and the cost of the restoration work undertaken. The media's lack of discussion on motivation leaves the general public with a very limited view into potential reasons why Shannon committed this criminal act. And now with the Monet back on view, but behind a protective layer of glass, the media and the general public miss the opportunity to discuss how this one act has changed the way the National Gallery and the general public interact with one another when it comes to visiting and experiencing Monet's Argenteuil basin with a single sailboat.